What if everything you believed about your world, its permanence, its divine protection, its destiny, collapsed in one generation? 1 month, 1 day. For the people of Constantinople, the unthinkable happened, and history, as it always does, marched on with blood-soaked boots. Founded by the mighty Romans, transformed into the vibrant, beating heart of the Christian world by Constantine the Great, this city was synonymous with resilience. Its colossal walls, those legendary ramparts of stone and iron, had become almost mythical. They had repelled Persians, Arabs, Vikings, Bulgars, and even, almost, the Crusaders. A list of invaders that reads like a who's who of a millennium of conflict. The Queen of Cities, as she was known, had by the mid-15th century become something more than just a living capital. She was a relic, a glowing ember of a once roaring fire, her former glory a distant echo in her quiet streets. By 1453, the city was in many ways a hollow shell of its former self. Its population, once numbering 1 million souls at its peak, had tragically dwindled to mere tens of thousands, a city meant for giants now inhabited by ghosts. The mighty Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire, which had once stretched across vast swaths of the Mediterranean, was now a shrinking, isolated entity, reduced to little more than the city itself. An island in a rising Ottoman sea. But still, those majestic Theodosian walls stood tall. 3 layers thick, each one a testament to ancient engineering. They had remained unbreached for nearly 1,000 years. They were the city's last desperate hope, its final defiant breath against the inevitable. And then, from the east, came a new, unstoppable force, a young man with an old ambition, and his name was Mehmed. Our story now turns to the other side of the Bosporus, to a young man who would reshape the world. His name was Mehmed II. He was just 21 years old when he ascended to the throne of the Ottoman Empire. To many in his own court, he seemed impossibly young, perhaps too untested, too inexperienced to wield the immense power that came with the title of Sultan. But those who underestimated Mehmed did so at their peril. Beneath that youthful exterior pulsed the mind of a brilliant strategist, a ruthless pragmatist, and a man possessed of a singular consuming dream. He didn't just want Constantinople. He craved it. He saw it not as a target for conquest, but as a symbolic inheritance. He wanted to claim its legacy, to become the new Caesar, the undisputed ruler of a burgeoning global empire that would eclipse all that came before. He was a man who understood destiny, and he believed Constantinople was his. His preparation for war was chillingly precise, a testament to his methodical genius. He began amassing an army of unprecedented scale, possibly 80,000 strong, a swirling tide of hardened warriors, elite janissaries, and disciplined cavalry. It was an overwhelming force, unlike anything the Byzantines had faced in centuries. But sheer numbers weren't enough. Mehmed understood the formidable challenge presented by Constantinople's walls, so he sought out the best siege engineers from Europe, men who understood the dark art of breaking stone. Among them was Orban, a Hungarian master craftsman who had first offered his services to the Byzantines, only to be rejected due to their poverty. Mehmed embraced him, and from Orban's genius came the crown jewel of the Ottoman arsenal. The city, meanwhile, had little to counter such a force. Its defenders numbered perhaps 7,000 souls. Think about that, 7,000 against 80,000. It was a ragtag collection, weary Byzantine soldiers, a handful of foreign mercenaries, primarily brave Italians led by the Genoese general Giovanni Giustiniani Longo, devout monks who had taken up arms, and even eager teenage volunteers, their faces etched with a desperate, naive courage. They were a microcosm of a dying empire, unified by desperation. They were led by Emperor Constantine XI Palaiologos, a man of profound nobility, caught in an undeniably doomed role. He was the last emperor of Rome, though few outside his city even recognized the title anymore. The weight of 1,000 years of history rested on his shoulders. The siege began in April 1453. The stage was set for one of history's most epic and tragic confrontations. Inside the walls, a different kind of battle unfolded. One fought with prayer, with desperate toil, and with dwindling hope. Priests, their voices hoarse from endless liturgies, offered fervent prayers for divine intervention, their faith a fragile shield against the storm. Soldiers, their faces streaked with grime and exhaustion, toiled ceaselessly, mending shattered bricks and crumbling stone with whatever debris and dirt they could find. Every night, the breaches created by the monstrous cannon would be filled by dawn, a testament to their unwavering, desperate effort. Civilians, their hope dwindling but not extinguished, made their own sacrifices. They melted down precious church silver, transforming centuries of holy artifacts, chalices, crosses, icons, into coins to pay for supplies, to buy food, to sustain the desperate defense. Every Sunday, a solemn procession gathered at the Hagia Sophia, the grand cathedral of Christendom, its immense dome a silent witness to their desperation. They filled its vast nave, asking for divine salvation, utterly convinced that God would protect them, as he always had throughout their history. It was a desperate plea to a God who seemed, for the first time, to be silent. But the cracks were showing, literally and figuratively. Despite the superhuman efforts of the defenders, the relentless pounding took its toll. Sections of the mighty walls began to crumble, exposing the vulnerability beneath the ancient facade. Yet the defenders, led by the brave Italian general Giovanni Giustiniani, fought with an almost superhuman resolve. They repelled assault after assault. Night raids aimed at sowing panic, cunning tunnels dug beneath the walls in an attempt to undermine them, even naval blockades meant to starve the city into submission. Every single tactic Mehmed threw at them was met with fierce, tenacious resistance. Mehmed, despite his overwhelming force, despite his tactical brilliance, grew frustrated. His young ambition was being held at bay by a handful of men in a crumbling city. He even offered terms of surrender, a chance for the city to yield peacefully, to spare its remaining inhabitants. But Constantine, the last emperor, met his offer with a defiant, heartbreaking refusal. His words echoed with the tragic dignity of a dying empire, a final, poignant stand. To surrender the city God entrusted to me is not mine to give. This was the heart of a dying empire, refusing to bow. 1,000 years of legacy, 1,000 years of Christian dominion, hinged on the unbreakable will of one man and the fading hope of a few thousand souls. But time and the might of an empire were running out. May 28, 1453. The air in Constantinople was thick with a chilling certainty. Every soul within the walls knew, with a bone-deep dread, that the end was not just near, but imminent. The Ottomans, after weeks of relentless pounding, were preparing for their final, massive assault. It would be a last, desperate push to shatter the city's ancient defenses, to overwhelm the exhausted defenders. The day of reckoning had arrived. And then, the emperor himself, Constantine XI, the last emperor of Rome, made his final, most poignant preparations. He removed his imperial regalia, the symbols of his doomed lineage, the crown, the purple cloak, the very essence of his rank. He shed them not in defeat, but in a final act of solidarity. Like any common soldier, he joined the defenders on the walls, ready to fight not as a distant ruler, but as one of his beleaguered people, to die with them, if necessary. It was an act of profound courage and tragic resignation. And then, the emperor himself, Constantine XI, the last emperor of Rome, made his final, most poignant preparations. He removed his imperial regalia, the symbols of his doomed lineage, the crown, the purple cloak, the very essence of his rank. He shed them not in defeat, but in a final act of solidarity. Like any common soldier, he joined the defenders on the walls, ready to fight not as a distant ruler, but as one of his beleaguered people, to die with them, if necessary. It was an act of profound courage and tragic resignation. Constantine, the last emperor of Rome, refused to flee. He cast aside his sword and cried out, "The city has fallen, and I am still alive." He fought to the death in the labyrinthine streets, a noble warrior in a lost cause, defending his people to the very last breath. His body, a symbol of final resistance, was never found amidst the carnage. The last Roman emperor had vanished, consumed by the fall he desperately tried to prevent. As the sun finally began to rise on May 29th, the fighting slowly died down. Mehmed, the young sultan, rode into the city that had defied his ancestors for centuries. He came not as a barbarian, but as a conqueror claiming his rightful prize. He rode directly to Hagia Sophia, now filled not with praying Christians, but with desperate, terrified civilians who had sought refuge within its sacred walls. In a surprising act of restraint, a testament to his vision for his new capital, he ordered no more slaughter. He entered the vast, silent space. Then, in a moment that would forever define his reign, he knelt. And he prayed, not as a conqueror gloating over his victory, but as a world-shaping force of history, claiming his destiny, seeking divine approval for the new era he was ushering in. Constantinople had fallen. The Roman Empire, begun with Augustus Caesar in 27 BCE, spanning nearly 1,500 years, died here on this fateful day in 1453. It was an end, but also the beginning of something new. Then, in a moment that would forever define his reign, he knelt. And he prayed, not as a conqueror gloating over his victory, but as a world-shaping force of history, claiming his destiny, seeking divine approval for the new era he was ushering in. Constantinople had fallen. The Roman Empire, begun with Augustus Caesar in 27 BCE, spanning nearly 1,500 years, died here. On this fateful day in 1453, it was an end, but also the beginning of something new. Mehmed, the triumphant sultan, immediately set about transforming his prize. He renamed the city Istanbul, and with astonishing speed, made it the glittering cosmopolitan capital of a new, expansive Ottoman and Islamic empire. He didn't just conquer, he built. He brought in scholars, architects, and artists from across his vast domains, breathing new life into the ancient city. And remarkably, he allowed Orthodox Christianity to survive, albeit under his dominion, a testament to his pragmatic vision for a diverse yet unified empire. In the West, the fall of Constantinople sent shockwaves across Europe. The established trade routes to the east, long reliant on the city as a gateway, collapsed, causing immense economic upheaval. Fear of the growing Ottoman power spread, pushing European powers to seek new avenues of expansion and engagement. Some historians even argue that this pivotal event directly sparked the age of exploration. Just decades later, Christopher Columbus would set sail, driven by the desperate need to find a new way to the east, bypassing the now Ottoman-controlled Mediterranean. The world was forced to expand, to look beyond its familiar horizons. And, perhaps most significantly for the course of Western civilization, the ancient Greek texts and knowledge preserved within Constantinople's libraries, which had been accumulating for over a millennium, now flowed west. Scholars fleeing the conquered city carried these precious manuscripts with them, scattering them across Europe. They ignited a fervent intellectual curiosity, a rediscovery of classical thought that would fuel the Renaissance, giving birth to a new era of art, science, and philosophy in Europe. In its death, the city gave birth to something new, something that would shape the modern world irrevocably. The end of one empire truly was the beginning of others. We often think history ends with a bang, with fire and ruin, a definitive closure. But sometimes, history ends with a song, a prayer inside a cathedral, the triumphant cry of a cannon, the final, desperate breath of an emperor. And from those ashes, from that profound loss, new worlds are born. The fall of Constantinople was not just the end of an empire, it was the crucible from which a new global order emerged, its echoes still reverberating in our world today. Visual, final, impactful image could be a serene yet powerful view of Istanbul at dawn, or a symbolic image of a phoenix rising from ashes, or a hand reaching for a glowing book. End on a powerful, lingering shot.